The slap cracked through the bright cafe like a gunshot, sharp and humiliating, echoing across clinking cups and soft afternoon music. And in that single frozen moment, every eye turned toward a tired single father standing beside a small table, his daughter's unfinished juice trembling in his hand. No one knew that the man who had just been struck in public, in broad daylight, carried a past forged in fire, sacrifice, and classified silence. No one knew that the quiet stranger being humiliated in front of his child had once survived places most people only see in nightmares. And no one knew how close this ordinary cafe, soaked in sunlight and kindness only minutes earlier, was to becoming the stage for a life-changing lesson. Before the story unfolds any further, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel Whisper Tales 3. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them most. It was late morning, the kind of soft golden daytime light that warmed the sidewalk and painted long shadows across the cafe windows. Ayaan Mercer had chosen this little corner shop because it felt safe and gentle, a place where no one rushed him and where the barista always smiled at his daughter as if she mattered. He worked 2 jobs now, one at a delivery warehouse before sunrise and another fixing phones in the afternoon, and every free moment belonged to 6-year-old Mira, whose laughter had become the fragile glue holding his broken life together. Since his wife had passed 3 years earlier in a highway accident, the world had narrowed into school drop-offs, late bills, hospital paperwork, and small promises whispered to a sleeping child at night that tomorrow would somehow be better. He had just finished cutting a blueberry muffin into careful, bite-sized pieces for Mira when the man arrived. The bully did not look dangerous at first. He looked loud. He looked entitled. He looked like someone who had learned that raising his voice was easier than raising his character. His name, as Ayaan would later overhear, was Brandon Hale, and he filled the cafe with restless energy and careless laughter as he shoved past a table and bumped into Ayaan's chair hard enough to spill coffee onto the floor. Ayaan stood immediately, apologizing out of instinct, even though he had done nothing wrong. He was used to shrinking now. Life had taught him that staying small made storms pass faster. But Brandon did not want peace. He wanted dominance. The insult came first, sharp and unnecessary, aimed at Ayaan's worn jacket and the faint grease mark on his sleeve from his morning shift. Ayaan felt Mira's tiny fingers tighten around his hand. He lowered his head, murmuring another apology, trying to shield her eyes from the tension rising in the room. He only wanted to leave. He only wanted to keep his daughter safe from ugliness. The slap arrived when he turned to gather their things. It was fast, open-handed, cruel, and humiliating. The force twisted his head sideways and sent a dull ringing through his ears. Gasps rippled through the cafe. Someone dropped a spoon. Mira froze, her wide brown eyes searching his face in silent terror. Ayaan did not fall. He did not raise his fists. He closed his eyes. And in that breath of stillness, memories rushed in uninvited. Dust storms and burning metal. Shouted commands through broken radios. The weight of body armor. The ache of loss that never made headlines. He had once been part of something the world would never thank him for. He had once carried the patch and the responsibility of Delta Force, a life built on secrecy, precision, and lethal restraint. He had walked away when his wife begged him to come home for good. He had traded missions for diapers, rifles for storybooks, and silence for lullabies. He had promised himself that violence would never again be the language his daughter learned from him. The bully laughed, expecting fear. Instead, Ayaan slowly turned, not with anger, with gravity. There was something in his eyes that made the air change, something calm and steady and deeply unsettling to anyone who understood what real control looked like. He gently crouched to Mira's level, brushing a crumb from her cheek, whispering reassurance with a softness that did not match the tension vibrating through the room. He stood again and faced Brandon, his posture straight, his hands open at his sides, his voice low and firm enough to cut through noise without shouting. He told the man that this cafe was full of children and tired people in invisible battles. He told him that hurting strangers did not make him powerful. He told him that whatever pain he was carrying did not give him permission to spread it. Brandon scoffed at first, but then he saw the scar at Ayaan's collarbone, barely visible where the jacket had shifted. He noticed the stillness, the way Ayaan measured distance without moving, the way his breathing never changed. Something in Brandon's bravado cracked. Security arrived quickly, called by a trembling cashier. The manager stepped forward, asking everyone to remain calm. A small crowd had formed, silent now, heavy with judgment and curiosity. When security separated them, Brandon's protests came out hollow. His eyes flicked to Ayaan's hands again, as if afraid they might move. A police officer arrived minutes later. Statements were taken. Mira sat on Ayaan's knee, her face buried in his chest, her fingers gripping his shirt as if the world might break apart without warning. Ayaan spoke simply. He did not mention his past. He did not explain how easily the situation could have gone differently. He only described what had happened and what he had chosen not to do. When the officer quietly asked if he had military experience, Ayaan hesitated. He nodded once. That was all. Brandon's tone changed when he realized who he had slapped. Not because Ayaan was famous, not because his name meant anything, but because the calm, exhausted man standing in front of him had once belonged to a world that did not tolerate ego or cruelty. A world where mistakes were paid for with blood. A world that demanded accountability in its purest form. The bully looked smaller now. Not physically, spiritually. And something unexpected happened. Brandon apologized. It was awkward, unpolished, uncomfortable, but it was real. He admitted that his life had been unraveling since losing his job. That anger followed him everywhere, that he no longer recognized himself in mirrors. The words spilled out in front of strangers because shame had finally grown heavier than pride. Ayaan listened. That was the quiet miracle. He listened. He told Brandon that pain did not make someone evil, but refusing to face it did. He told him that the strongest men he had ever known were not the ones who broke others, but the ones who learned how to rebuild themselves. He told him that it was never too late to choose a different ending. The sunlight streamed through the cafe windows as the tension slowly dissolved. People returned to their seats. A few wiped their eyes. The manager offered Mira a free cookie shaped like a star. She smiled for the first time since the slap. Outside, as Ayaan prepared to leave, Brandon stopped him, not to argue, to thank him. And when Ayaan walked away holding his daughter's hand, something inside him finally loosened. For the first time in years, he felt proud not of what he had once survived, but of what he had refused to become. Years from now, Mira would not remember the slap. She would remember the way her father stood still when the world tried to make him violent. She would remember that strength can be quiet, and that courage sometimes looks like mercy. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that healing is possible even after the worst moments, please take a second to like, share, engage with this video so more people can feel this message of hope and second chances. Before the story ends, we have one special request for you. Please comment just below and tell us one small act of kindness you will choose today. Because in a bright little cafe on an ordinary day, one single father proved that real heroes are not defined by what they can destroy, but by what they protect.